we're bringing in our pitch hitter podcast co-host today, Brian Deshawn.
Thanks, Blake. Wait, am I the weekend weather guy?
Welcome to the Church Gear Podcast, where we pull the tech out of the booth and onto the stage to share the most outlandish stories and hidden wisdom from the tech trenches. And now, here are your hosts.
I'm your host, Blake Hodges, a man who is adjusting to Toby being too sick to come into work today. And I'm here with my co-host who...
Blake, you know there's like a weeknight weather person? They're the person everybody loves, and they're the best meteorologist at a TV station. And then they go to the weekend, and they have these schmucks who do the weather on the weekend who may or may not be a meteorologist.
Just someone off the street, whoever they could find with a suit.
Yeah. Am I suddenly like the weekend podcast host for Church Gear?
I'm not going to answer that question. We're going to keep moving. What I think we should really focus on is Toby didn't show up to work today.
Yeah, well, wait a second. I might be the new weeknight podcast host because Toby is too sick to come and do a podcast.
Exactly. And like, Toby, you know what? I don't care if you stubbed your toe on some gear. I don't care if the dog bothered you last night. Like, you didn't come into work today and you're fired.
That's great. I think Toby should be fired. Also, am I going to get Toby's germs from this microphone?
Oh, Brian, the list of diseases you have has not even been approved by the CDC for us to inform you of what you've caught from Toby now.
That's scary.
Yeah, you know what? Nope, not going to go that route. That's too dark. But let's just say Toby was too sick today to show up for work. And so he had to take a little sicky day, a little sicky. And
wonder if Shelly is sitting by his bedside, holding a vigil. Yeah, and holding a vigil over him to see if he'll ever come back to work.
You know what? I don't think he is. I think this is the day we claim Church Gear. So it's
all right.
now.
So Blake, here's, if you allow me.
Please do.
Since I'm auditioning to be the weeknight podcast host.
I don't think you're auditioning. I think Toby died.
I'm in. So can I do the intro today?
Please,
just
yes.
as an audition, you can tell me how I do, and maybe by the end, we'll decide if we want to get Toby out of this and let me sit in this seat from here on out.
Roger that. Let's go.
Okay. So several years ago, when I was still working in the music business, before I came here to work at Church Gear, I was at a concert in South Alabama. It was a Chris Tomlin concert in South Alabama. And the auditorium that was in, the place was like basically a municipal gymnasium. Like it was just a big brick building. And they had a nice stage and everything, but then the backdrop was just a big cinder block wall with a massive American flag.
There we go, America.
And I was at the concert and thinking, who's the production team that allowed this venue to be the hosting a Chris Tomlin concert, and the backdrop is a cinder block wall and American flag? That's all fine, but it just was weird. And so I was like, Chris Tomlin's people have to be better than this. And I was wondering that night, who are Chris Tomlin's people that allowed this to happen? So I wonder if our guest was at that concert and was responsible for Chris Tomlin playing in front of a cinder block wall and American flag. So let's bring up our guest today, the co-founder of MxU and mixing legend, Jeff Sandstrom.
Well, hey guys, how are you?
Jeff, are you proud to be an American? Is that what happened here? We had to get that whole flag for the whole event.
So I got to ask you, Brian, when was that event? Like what year?
Let's see. What's today? It's 2024, maybe 20. It was pre-COVID. For sure. So maybe 2018, 2017, somewhere in there.
Okay. So my tenure with Chris, anything that I was responsible for, I've done some fill-in stuff since I left for sure,
right.
But my tenure with Chris officially ended at the end of 2016. So if it was after that, I have no culpability in any stage design or lack thereof. So
okay, well, you're off the hook
I appreciate
for that particular show.
There was a show in Alabama. So you mentioned LA. I mean, most people think LA stands for Los Angeles, but for a lot of people in the Southeast, LA stands for Lower Alabama.
Did you know that, Blake?
I'm learning it right now. That's my new thing for the day.
Also known as the Redneck Riviera. If you go all the way down, to the beach,
yes,
you can get a lot of class and culture in Lower Alabama.
Right.
But further north in Alabama, there's a city called OPP.
Okay.
And I don't know about you, but in the 90s, I was definitely down with OPP.
Yes.
Yeah, you know me. But there was an event that we played, and I don't know how Chris got booked for this. I mean, sometimes like some of these venues and events, I would often wonder, like, did anybody run this by management? Like, are we even clued into what we're doing here? So we show up, in the summers, we would do a lot of different festivals.
Right.
And so we would go to Creation Fest, Creation East, Creation West, a live festival, a bunch of stuff at, theme parks, Carowinds, and Spirit Fest at Cincinnati, and all these massive and not so massive festivals. Well, this time in Opp, Alabama, we played what is affectionately known as the Rattlesnake Rodeo.
Ooh.
And there are guys.
That conjures up lots of images for me now.
They're rattling around in our heads.
It is like there were rattlesnakes doing all sorts of things. But there were these snake handlers who would give these demos to kids all about rattlesnake venom and biology, and
my skin is crawling right now, just so you know.
I know. So there was some actual ecology that was happening that was actually probably really instructional and fun. But it was like, I'm going to try to find a picture.
Were the snake handlers holding the rattlesnakes as they're talking, as they're teaching?
100%.
Oh my gosh. I'm just imagining they're like, we need a volunteer. Here, Billy. Billy gets bit by the snake. We're going to teach you what happens to Billy here.
And I'm glad I'm wearing a black t-shirt because my armpits are sweating right now. Just thinking about snakes.
Well, then that is something you'd have in line with the co-host you replaced, because Toby's normally sweating there too. Oh, man.
Oh, I don't know if you can see it. Oh, I got to I'm going to unblur my background.
See, even Zoom knows that's too scary to show, to the modern person.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if we can unblur my background and you can see this guy.
Jeff, here's my next question.
Yeah, so there's my guy holding the rattlesnake.
I can't look anymore.
He would pinch his neck so that he'd make him open his mouth and the fangs would come out.
Tell me when it's over, Blake.
It's almost over.
Do you think
there's the snake on the ground crawling toward us?
Oh,
I mean, these rattlesnakes were at least 6 to 8 feet long and, as big around as a fire hose. I mean, it was crazy.
Just my heart is racing right now.
Yeah. And then we have to go sing How Great Is Our God. I'm like,
well, yeah, because he delivered you from those snakes from getting bit.
Maybe so, yeah.
Maybe you don't know this, maybe you do, but do you think they had defanged, like devenomized them? Or are they just holding this live venomous snake in that moment, you think? Did they say anything about that by chance?
Judging by the amount of teeth that was in most of these guys' heads, I would assume that there was no devenoming at all.
Jeff, are you talking about the snakes having teeth or the people holding them?
The handlers, for sure.
This is incredible and terrifying at the same time.
You never know what you're going to get when you hang out at Christian music festivals.
No, that's the truth. That's the truth. You and I could probably, for the next hours, do a podcast on fun, amazing stories of festival things and Christendom of music.
Okay, you think it's all, corn dogs and funnel cakes, but it's not. So there's one more story real quick. I know we have to get to a lot of things.
This is what podcasts are made for.
Let me try to find another. Well, I won't find the media for this because you had to be there, but there is a particular festival. It's a state fair, and the stage that's where the headlining musicians play every week is basically the same area that they have the Demolition Derby. And so all throughout Soundcheck, all day long, you're trying to set up your gear and have Soundcheck in the middle of beat up cars who are literally trying to murder each other. So there's one, I've done it with Chris several times, and I was there with Lauren Daigle a couple of times. So I've experienced this probably 5 or 6 times in my career, where we show up and there's this, it's like right at noon or 1 o'clock, where the big event for the Demolition Derby is Demolition Derby football. And so they set up the cars on either end of the infield. And then there's this massive empty propane tank that's painted like a football.
Oh my gosh.
And the object is for the cars to basically get the football from one end zone to the other by smashing into it with their cars and pushing it along the field. And it is the loudest, most raucous, hilarious, unbelievable thing you've ever seen. I mean, it's awesome.
I know what I'm YouTubing tonight.
I just don't understand the fire hazard, how that doesn't blow something up. I guess all the stuff is out of it.
The tank has been cleaned and empty, but it's one of those like you would have at outside your trailer, down at the trailer park. I mean,
now here's the question.
It's for your home heating, like that size propane tank.
Is there a rodeo clown inside the propane tank?
No, there might have been a worship leader though. I'm not sure.
No. He hit that bridge a 7th time and they sent him to the rodeo. This is tracking, guys. One of the guys in my small group that's been in the small group for 4 years is from Alabama. And he was telling me how a tractor pull was just like, that was a whole Friday night for them. That was a whole Saturday night for them. So
100%.
More power to you.
Yeah. And this was somewhere in the Midwest. It might have been Iowa. It might have been, Michigan, Minnesota. I forget exactly where it is, but you need to go look it up. Look up Demolition Derby football and just go down the YouTube black hole.
Man, well, I know what I'll be doing this weekend. That's going to be a big event for me, seeing all these. And we've got to customize 5 truths and a lie today. So, Jeff, you and I know this info. Brian is going to be the one trying to guess your lie here. So I accidentally saw the lie in the communication. So I'm gonna be honest, bow out, even though it was real tempting to get an easy score. All right.
So we don't get to compete?
Nope. But the nice thing is, if you would have won, I would have given that point to Toby.
Oh, great.
See, but no, you don't now because I'm not in it. See?
Oh, okay. So I can claim this point for myself.
Yes, no points for Toby.
And I'm not keeping score, but I will say if you get this point, then that is another point in your favor from moving from weekend weatherman to weeknight weatherman.
Perfect. All right. Now I feel the pressure now.
The stakes are high. Here we go. Number 1.
I've got to tell you, when we're finished, I'm going to tell you the lie that I wanted to submit, but it would have been so obvious a lie that everybody would have gotten it.
Okay.
Ooh, I like that tease. Here we go. Number 1, pop-ups are a great spot to meet new friends and production in your community. Number 2, Jeff Sandstrom will be giving away mix templates from his Chris Tomlin tour last year. I hope they're from the Derby. Number 3, Jeff has reminded Dylan Howell the dates more than once.
For sure.
Well, hey, interesting. Okay. Number 4, various varieties of sports ball will be provided for the hang. Number 5, it will be MxU's first time in the Pacific Northwest. Number 6, and finally, pop-ups are for everyone, whether you're the leader of your team or not. I'll tell you, Brian, I know the answer, and I'm glad I do, because this would actually be really difficult for me.
So I have to work myself through this.
Okay.
So clearly, pop-ups are a great spot to meet new friends and production in your community. Jeff Lee just said that.
Yeah, and then I backed it up with fire sheets. I mean, that was pretty clear.
Right. And then, as also Jeff said, pop-ups are for everyone, whether you're the leader of your team or not. So those are both true. So 1 and 6 are true. It will be MxU's first time in the Pacific Northwest. I believe that's a truth because MxU isn't even close to the Northwest. So
that one would have got me though because they travel so much.
That's right. But I'm confident in that one. So now we're down to 3. The mixed templates for his Chris Tomlin tour last year. Him reminding Dylan Howell the dates more than once, and then various varieties of sports ball. Now, how these are worded could be a little bit tricky. Because various varieties of sports ball, what if it's just one sports ball for all 6 events?
Well, in football, this is the only sport anyway, so I don't know that there'd be a second sport ball to have.
Right. And then this is also what I have to think about is in the story I told at the beginning about the American flag and, cinder block wall, Jeff said he quit working with Chris Tomlin in 2016. So does he have mixed templates from Chris from last year? Because he says he's having out and he's gone out with Chris again. So maybe he does, maybe he doesn't.
Oh,
well, would it help you if I said that I did the spring tour for Chris last year in his Songs of Worship tour?
No, that's not helpful at all because it could still be a lie. Like that actually clouds it even more.
Exactly.
This is going to sound mean, but I'm fairly confident that Jeff's had to remind Dylan Howell the dates more than once. So I'm going to say that's true.
Okay.
Because I'm going to trust Jeff that he knows what the dates are, and he can just roll off his tongue as quickly as possible. He doesn't have to look anywhere. He just knows what they are. All right, so various varieties of sports ball or mixed templates. Ooh. I'm going to say Jeff is not going to give away mixed templates from his Chris Tomlin tour last year.
No, that's the one we probably want the most. All right, Jeff, that's his lie. What's he ranking at here?
Point for Brian. That is the lie.
Yes!
The weekend weather guy comes through.
I'm officially weeknight. Toby, you're out.
Man, Toby,
So what I was going to submit for the lie was that Blake would be speaking from the stage at all of the events. Because anybody who knows us knows that we wouldn't give Blake a microphone in a million years.
Oh, man. See, but what if it was the event like it was a dunk tank, They'd totally put me in a dunk tank.
Right,
so,
right.
Just saying, we'll throw that out there. Speak it into the universe.
Actually, we might need to throw a dunk tank on the truck just for that purpose.
Jeff, you could have put 2 in there that we will give, we will never give Blake an opportunity to speak from our stage. We will make sure Toby can always speak from our stage. And then juxtapose which one of those is the truth, which one is a lie.
Which one is most likely to never happen?
But see, Toby's sick, so he missed out on that.
What happens when an immovable force meets an immovable object? I mean, or an unstoppable force and an immovable object. That's what those two would hit at. Okay, well.
I'm glad I got a point.
You did. I'm going to put it on the scoreboard.
Thank you.
Jeff, let's talk some more about these live productions. We talked about all the MxU events and we're looking forward to those. Let's talk about some other events. Let's talk about the Super Bowl that just happened.
That's a pretty big live event that happens every year.
It's not as big as MxU Pop Ups though. I mean, it really wishes. So I know we're a few weeks late. Hey, listen guys, if you just say it confidently, you'd be surprised how far you can get. We keep saying it, we'll overtake the Super Bowl. I know we're a few weeks late on it, but let's just talk about the Super Bowl halftime show. What was your opinion of the performance, the production? It's always interesting to watch these performances because the Facebook groups, positive or negative, have a lot of comments either direction. It's interesting to watch the Facebook feast of comments and just curious on your take from the show.
Well, it's funny. I try to avoid any social media on either the Super Bowl or the Grammys or any of the award shows because most of the people who are the loudest in those Facebook groups have no idea what it takes to pull off any of these live events. So on the MxU podcast, we've had interviews with the people who were the audio mixer for the Super Bowl, and to get their take on, not this year, but years past, and to get their take on what it actually takes to do this mix is just phenomenal. And so, I always marvel at the fact that they're able to turn the field from a football game to a stadium level production musical in less than 10 minutes. And then to get it all off the field and back to a football game in less than 20 minutes. It's like just the army of people and the logistics and the, what it takes to pull all that off is just phenomenal. The other thing about it that I'll say is for people who judge it, you have to judge it in terms of a visual spectacle. You can't necessarily judge it only as an audio experience. Because I guarantee you that the audio leaving the truck at the stadium to get to the world is great. The problem happens when that transmission has to go down the pipe, up to the satellite, down to the ground, and get from Comcast, AT&T, Google, local cable providers, over-the-air antennas, however it gets to your neighborhood, and then gets from that pipe to the cable that's connected to your underground wire in your subdivision to get to your house, to get into your soundbar or your 5.1 system or your single speaker TV or your computer speakers or your AirPods it's like there's so many variables. And it could be that there's a guy in the local transfer station who's responsible for making sure that all 5-6 channels of this 5.1 mix are getting down the pipe, and he's eating a sandwich and doesn't know
that the network
cable Right. He doesn't know that the network cable got unplugged or whatever it is. So, I mean, there's so many things that impact your viewing and listening experience that for you to expect your house to sound exactly like the guy on Facebook who's complaining about how it sounds at his house is ludicrous, because you may have a center channel in your home hi-fi system that is expecting a vocal that might not be getting the vocal, or vice versa. The other guy has that set up and it sounds great, and your system is trying to do a fold down of that mix to your stereo soundbar or your mono soundbar that is doing a fake stereo emulation for your living room. It's like, who cares? Does it look good? Does it look good? Is it entertaining? Are they performing in a way that's engaging? Is it appropriate for your family to be watching? I mean, there's a lot of things that I would say go into my opinion of some of these things. For example, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, when it was the J-Lo kind of half clothing optional Super Bowl. It was like, I really don't think I want my daughter to sit here with me and experience this. But this year I thought they did a great job. Like, I think it was very entertaining. I think, the number of artists that were involved and the songs and the level of engagement and the dancing and the performing, it's really phenomenal. The other thing I would say is, for anybody who thinks that in the last, I would say for sure 10 years, if there's a lot of dancing going on, chances are there's no live singing going on.
Right.
I mean, the fact that people are concerned about the quality of the vocal, it's like, man, most of the time it's lip synced. It's just the way it is. Macy's Day Parade, award shows, whatever it is. It's like, there's a lot of times where they have to use tracks, and that's okay. This is not The Voice. This is not American Idol. This is not a live show on Broadway where you're in a theater expecting these singers to be operatic performers. It's like, man, he's up there dancing and interacting with these hundreds of other dancers and pyro and all the stuff happening. It's like, man, was it entertaining or not? It's a football game. It's not a concert.
Right.
So when you put it in the context of, hey, I'm watching a football game and this world-class concert broke out, that's actually pretty cool.
Man, I like that perspective so much. Like, was it entertaining? Was it not? And, I'm not here to judge, just to play some inside baseball here. Me and Brian couldn't even get the podcast going for 20 minutes before, and we actually had everything plugged in right. We just didn't understand something. So I can't imagine all the steps that Jeff was laying out, Brian, to just transmit the audio. I mean, I'm about to break out in hives just thinking of being responsible for that.
Next year, I'm picturing Jeff Sandstrom doing a commercial before the halftime show. That is him, a voiceover explaining this, and it shows the audio feed going to the truck just outside the stadium.
Oh, like an animation.
Yeah. And then the audio feed breaking out, going up to a satellite, coming back to everything he explained, and then having a family sitting in their family room with a little TV speaker. And it's like,
oh man, here's
like,
that's funny.
That would just be funny to watch that pattern, because consumers don't think about that. And Jeff, you said it so well, which I agree with, is I think people want to get critical about how, and I work in the music business, so I'm a little bit defensive about artists and how they sound.
Yeah.
But they want to get critical of how they sound because they expect them to sound like they do on pre-recorded, pre-produced, mixed music that you listen to on Spotify or Apple in HD. That's what they expect them to sound like live all the time.
Exactly.
People don't sound like that live. That's the reality.
Right. The amount of time, the amount of budget, the amount of tweaks, the amount of, engineers and producers that have kind of gotten their hands on these songs that people love. It's like, it's a completely different thing.
Right.
This is a record that went through untold edits and, approval process and all that. It's like, I get it if you're complaining about how the record sounds. That's totally fine.
Right.
But in a live environment, when it's not even a concert, it's a football game, give me a break. Just have fun.
Have you ever been to a Super Bowl, Jeff?
I have not. I would love to.
Because every year, what I always think about is that you're right. The halftime shows are made for TV. That's what it's made for, a visual spectacle for television viewers, which there are millions and millions of more than there are at the football game. I've always wondered what it sounds like in the stadium. Because there's no way they're mixing it for the stadium. Maybe they are, but I can't imagine they are.
And most people who are there, like, they're going to pay attention to it. But a lot of people are out of their seats going to the bathroom or going to get refreshments or doing whatever. It's like, and most of the audience is so far away that they're either watching it on, iMag, or they're barely seeing what's happening on the field. So, yeah, I think that's a good point as well.
I'd like for at the end of Jeff's commercial next year, when it's showing all the audio translating, for it to stop the commercial and it just goes to him and he says, "Are you not entertained?" And that's the ender.
Yes, that's so good.
Well, Jeff, speaking of being entertained, tell us about like the most difficult live event you've had to do. You've done so many live events in your career. We were talking earlier about your, dealing with cars crashing into each other as you're trying to do Soundcheck. What's the most difficult thing you've had to pull off in a production live environment?
You sent me this outline a while back, and the first thing that came to mind, I think, is what I would like to talk about, because it was difficult in a lot of ways, but the end result was just overwhelming. So in 2008, I was a part of Passion's first trip around the world when we did the first Passion World Tour. So it was our first foray into international events. So we had been to Kyiv, Ukraine, and Stockholm, Sweden, and Sao Paulo, Brazil, and London and Paris. And so there were it was just a diverse set of events, countries, audiences, engagement with churches. I mean, the fact that the church in Paris was able to have a gathering of several thousand young people, it was crazy, because the evangelical church in Paris is not nearly what it is in Brazil or the US or, other places in the West. And so anyway, we were just kind of overwhelmed in general about how just diverse and different and exciting and powerful these events were. So we get to Kampala, Uganda. And so when you think of what a big event would be in Uganda, South Africa is one thing, right? You go to Cape Town, you go to, a place like that, and it is very kind of European and very accessible, and the gear is great. You go to Uganda, not so much. And so to get the gear, like the PA and LED and lighting and all that, to the event, it had to come from Nairobi, Kenya, because the one company that could provide the gear was bringing it on the one road to Kampala. We were meeting on the athletic field at Makerere University in Kampala, Uganda. And when you think about Africa, it's Africa. I mean, it's pretty, it's literally this big flat soccer field outside of this university. And so we show up, basically the day before the event day was a load-in day. And so we had flown in and we're jet lagged, and we get to the field and things are kind of getting set up. The stage is up and the PA is hung. But it was not your like brand new, line array, just totally rocking. It was cobbled together, but it was functional. It was going to be a good show. But the console at front of house was an M7 CL, because that's the best we could get. And it was well worn. And so I'm tasked with going out there and kind of figuring out what I can do with the show file and build a show file before we're ready for the band to show up for rehearsal and sound check. And all of a sudden, the skies kind of turned a little dark, and somebody said, "I think it's going to rain." And literally, it went from "I think it's going to rain" to gale force winds and the hardest rain I've ever seen in like 5 seconds.
Noah's Ark is coming on the horizon.
I mean, build a boat, buddy, because you're going to float away. And so I have videos on my phone. It's really hard to picture, but it was torrential. And so this athletic field went from a mostly bare, sort of brown dirt, kind of clay field, sparse grass. So of course, not a lot to soak up the water that was coming.
We live in Tennessee. We know about clay and water pooling above clay.
It was a mud pit. Like literally, the shoes I had on that day did not make it on the plane ride home. Like literally, we got back. At the end of the day, we got in the van to go back to the hotel. My shoes went into the trash can at the hotel.
Crazy.
It was just, I mean, mud caked on this thick. And so it's like, you're standing in 2 inches of water by the time this rainstorm is done. So we're literally I was at front of house. Luckily there was a little tent covering me up, but wind was blowing sideways. So the guys on the video team had set up there were going to be 2 LED side screens, and these were not massive walls. It was literally, I think 16:9, like 16 feet by 9 feet. I mean, it was all they could get. And it was built up on scaffolding. And so one side was fully built, and there were these supports that came off the back at a 45-degree angle to kind of stabilize it to the ground. The other side, the stage left side, was up, but the supports weren't up yet. So the wind from this storm literally changes directions and blows sideways. And this LED wall goes from standing upright to, oh my gosh, the LED wall is going to fall and splat down into the mud.
Oh, no. Painful.
Yes. So the front of this LED is literally underwater. And so the storm lasted maybe 40 minutes. I mean, it wasn't like an all-day rain. It was just oh my gosh, where did this come from? And we're drenched. And now what do we do? So,
and I'm guessing you just don't pick an LED wall up out of the mud.
Not
like you just
not
don't get
quite.
guys. Okay, just making sure. I'm just picturing. Okay, sorry, keep going.
Well, unless you're in Kampala, Uganda.
Oh, okay.
Oh, here we go. Accidental spoilers.
Because that's what you have. You have a lot of guys. And so it was literally like everybody kind of gather around. And so they make this U of people around this scaffolding and grabbing what they can. And then they attach a rope to the top of it. And there's a couple guys in the back who are going to kind of pull the rope to help it kind of come up. And so it's literally like this sucking sound as it kind of squishes out of the mud. And they pull it up to the point where they could at least kind of stand it up, because they had to dismantle it all to be able to figure out what to do with these panels.
Right.
So for the rest of the day and for the whole next day, there's these guys who've been assigned to this task of how we're going to get this LED wall working. So they have every component dismantled. Each panel, each tile is disconnected, and they're out there with hair dryers.
No.
Trying to dry out all of this stuff and clean it. And so the show, like first night, so it was a 2-day event. So the first night and then the whole next day. So this is the day after load in. We have one side of the LED wall working, but I have to set the stage for what the video transmission was like in the first place. Cause they're, at this point it's 2008. So we're not talking about HD anything. And the cameras were not state of the art. And the video signal, I walked by Video World, and there's a guy, Uncle Sam, they called him, who is their video expert. We had Rusty Anderson as our video director, and we had a team, but Uncle Sam is sitting there with this, I think 3 or 4 stacks of VCRs and the video signal was going through VCRs to get from the camera to the wall because they didn't have an LED processor. And it was like, I mean, composite video. It wasn't anything other than you've got your RCA connector style video going through this rigmarole that he had cobbled together with duct tape and a coat hanger. I mean, it was crazy. But anyway, so we do the first night, and so we go from 0 to 100 because on this field, all of a sudden now the field has dried out because the water, it was standing water 2 inches when we left for the day. Ooh. We show up the next morning and it's completely dry. It's like it just drained. It was done. So we do our rehearsals throughout the day and sound checks, and I get my show file ready, and so we're ready to go. And 25,000 university age students show up to this thing, and it's just a sea of people. It's just massive. And so it was Chris Tomlin, Matt Redman, Christian Stanfill, the Standard Passion crew. And I mean, worship like you've never heard. It was just amazing. So we get through that first night and it's like, okay, this is going to be great. Meanwhile, there's this group of guys sitting off to the side trying to dry out these LED components with hair dryers, for crying out loud.
Yeah, when you said Uncle Sam, I was like, Uncle Sam wants you to use a hair dryer to fix his video wall.
100%. So there's these 3 or 4 guys who are tasked with trying to, okay, if we can get this up and running by the end of the event, this would be amazing. So the first night ends, we show up the next morning, there's a morning session. And so Matt Redman starts the session, and he gets, through the intro of Blessed Be Your Name, and the generator runs out of fuel. So we lose power everywhere. Because there's this generator that's responsible for providing the power for everything. And it's this rusted out bucket of metal that I don't even know how it generated anything. But it's there, and it's providing power as long as it has fuel. Well, somebody forgot to fill it up that morning, and so lost the PA, lost power. So Matt's up there, and all of a sudden it's like, you give and take away, you give and take away. He's in the bridge of the song, and people are going bananas. And it turned into this sort of open air, no PA, totally acoustic worship that was amazing. So they get the fuel back in the generator. Everything turns back on in time for Louis' talk. So we actually have a PA for the message and the rest of the worship. And so it was great. Meanwhile, there's these guys off to the side with their hair dryers trying to get this LED thing. So had another session that afternoon. And then the evening session was kind of the final session of the event. And our hairdryer guys are like crossing their fingers because they've gotten everything reassembled. The scaffolding is put back in place and it is up, but there's no signal going to it yet. And so doors are open because there are no doors, right? People just start showing up for the night after dinner.
There are no doors.
Here's 25,000 university age students who are coming ready for their evening worship set. And halfway through the first song, you start to see these little flickers of sections of the LED wall coming on. But it's not, they didn't put it back together with panel 1, panel 2, panel 3 in the same order as they were before. So it wasn't programmed yet. And so they're off with their little processor on the side trying to play this Tetris game to get the deal happening. And so literally, into the, like say it was a 4-song worship set at the front of the night. By the last chorus of the 4th song, it's like, and lyrics and IMAG are on the screen and everything is in the, and the people went berserk. It was like this was the best thing that's ever happened in production. And all of this was happening while the show was happening. Like there's no like, oh my gosh, we've got to delay doors, or, oh, what are we going to do? And this is never going to happen. And, somebody's just scrambling. It's like, man, if it happens, it happens. God's moving either way. So this technology is not going to get in the way. We're just going to try our best to make it happen and pull it off. So whether it's a cobbled together PA or a less than ideal console that maybe has a few less inputs than we would like, or whether it's an LED wall stuck in the mud, it's like our job is to use what we've been given to try to provide a way for people to be blessed and to kind of experience what God has for them in these days. And it was just such a good lesson for me to learn, for our team to learn. I think for the people in the crowd to learn. It's like, you know what? God's going to show up how he wants to show up, whether we're abiding by our planning center run sheet or not. And so, I don't know, it was very difficult. We were all completely exhausted when we went on the plane to get to the next city. But it's an experience that none of us will ever forget because of the way God moved in spite of the technology and how people were impacted in spite of what went wrong. It was like when I read your outline and it was like, okay, what's the most difficult? It's like, yeah, it was difficult, but man, it was one of the best. Like literally one of the best ever. And it was with some of the most inferior gear ever. And so I don't know, there's a lesson in there somewhere for a church team that's going, man, I wish we could do what so-and-so down the street does or whatever. It's like, yeah, that'd be great. But is that what God has for you? You know, is that what you've been called to do? Now, I'm not saying that you therefore then shirk the responsibility with the gear that you do have. Not at all. 100% not. Like, you need to be a good steward of whatever you have. And it's not bad to aspire to new things. It's not bad to really, wish that you had or work toward having or save money for X number of whatever new pieces of gear. That's great. But don't covet something that you don't have, thinking that it's going to make you have the experience that you should have. I think, the experience that you are having, when it's maximized, can be exactly what God wants you to have and exactly what he wants the people in your environments to have. And so, that's why we love Church Gear, is that you guys are really tasked with helping people steward that. And so it's, I don't know, that's an experience that will stick with me for a long, long time. I'll probably never forget it. But I am going to send you the video of the rainstorm.
Please do. Yes.
So, total side note about technology. So, this is 2008. The iPhone had been out for a year, and it did not have the ability to record video. But Jeff Sandstrom here was part of the iPhone jailbreak community. I don't know if anybody ever had a jailbroken iPhone, but one of the features that Jailbreak was able to give you is the ability to record video. Apple, it's funny. People talk about jailbroken iPhones. Some of your listeners are too young to even know what that is. Right. But, back in the day, there were these people who were trying to hack the OS of the iPhone and add features and add, widgets and all the stuff that was not available by Apple through the App Store. So Apple had thousands of free developers, basically. So things like copy paste and video record and other functionality that's now a part of our phone that we don't even think about came from the jailbreak community. So luckily, I had a jailbroken iPhone 3G and I was able to record video in 2008. So all that to say, I'm going to send you the video of the storm because you see feeder cable running to a power distro at front of house that's literally underwater. It's like, how is this thing ever going to work? And we were able to pull off an entire 2.5-day conference.
Now, Jeff, is the video footage you're going to send us going to look like the video screens in Uganda? Like, does it look like it's going to run through VCR, RCA?
Because it's so old.
Cable. Yeah.
It is definitely not HD, I'll tell you that.
Jeff, just listening to that story, what's going through my mind is just how we are in America. That for those of us that go to church, big churches, small churches, and for the majority of the people who listen to this podcast are technical leaders, production people who work very hard to make sure technology is not a distraction from the worship or the message that happens inside the church. Yet typically, my experience, even my own experience when I worked in my church, is that people complained about technology all the time. And it seemed to be a distraction for them. But I think we have a problem as Americans in that we don't always go to church for the right reasons. We go to church because of the big screens. We go to church because the musicians are awesome. We go to church because we just want to volunteer. We don't actually always go to church to encounter God through worship and a message somewhere. Like all those students there, they didn't care about the technology. They were called to worship God and they wanted to encounter God in that moment. The technology didn't matter for how they were going to engage God because God doesn't care about the technology. But in America, I think that's an issue we have.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Anyway,
I think, and this isn't everybody in Africa, so don't hear me make this blanket statement. Sure. But the times that I've been to Africa where it is like the most poverty-stricken parts of Africa or the places of greatest need where we would feel like as Americans, gosh, how could we ever live this way or whatever? I've experienced that in Uganda, in Ghana, in Malawi. Those are 3 examples of places I've been at events where it's like, this is the most joy-filled, faith-filled, unbelievable worship I've ever seen. And it reminds me of a quote from Mother Teresa who said, it's amazing how you see people where, what is the quote? She said, it's easy to understand how God is all you need when God is all you have. And I think there was this sort of desperation and passion in worship, not from if I do this, then God will bless me, materially. That's not what I'm talking about. It's more about the relationship with God, the dependence on God, the yearning for God, the eagerness to engage that people had when all the other things that we get distracted by were not even an issue. The other thing is, these kids on this university field are used to stuff breaking all the time. Like they, somebody's stranded by the side of the road. Yeah, because their car isn't very good. So yeah, it happens every day. LED falls into the mud. Yeah, we had a storm. It happens. I mean, it was that kind of deal. It wasn't like this is a deal breaker. What are we going to do? It's like, okay, we'll use our, just ingenuity and wisdom and smarts to kind of figure out a plan. And if that takes, hair dryers and a bunch of screws getting undone so we can reassemble this thing after it's dried out and all these ribbon connectors and all this stuff, it's like, okay, well, let's see if it'll work. And sure enough, it did. So
amazing.
Jeff, I can't wait to get that video from you. I'm going to interlace that with the podcast and post it so people can see what we're talking about because that sounds pretty riveting. And man, I really connected when you said you got off the the event is done, you got to the hotel room and you threw your shoes in the trash can because Brian, I don't know if you noticed this. When we were coming back from MxU Live in September, we rode in the car together.
Yes, we did.
This is not because of weather. I can't blame weather. I can only blame my stinky feet. But after wearing my shoes for 4 days in a row at MxU Live, I tossed them in the hotel trash can and I wore my flip-flops home because I got back to the hotel room and I was like, this is like, I need to call the CDC. So I understand, Jeff, finishing an event, needing to throw it away, throw your shoes just right in the garbage.
I'll send you a picture of the shoes too because it's
please do
pretty stunning.
I like to say that in my time in the music business, in Dallas, Texas, there used to be this big, massive festival, South Fork Ranch, which is where the TV show Dallas was filmed. If you've ever, I'm going old school now, but just go Google it, look it up on YouTube.
We played that festival with Tomlin multiple times.
Yeah, I'm sure that's when we were at places all at the same time when we didn't know each other. But one year, it was a torrential downpour. And it's just a big open field, lots of dirt. And very long story short, one of my coworkers got stuck in a golf cart in the mud. And so a few of us went over to go push her out of this golf cart. And when we pushed, the golf cart got loose and my feet kept moving, except when my foot came out of the mud, my shoe was not on my foot any longer. I looked into the ground. I did not see my shoe.
It was gone.
So there's a size 10 red and white Nike that's in South Fork Ranch ground somewhere.
Oh, that thing has disintegrated 100 years ago already. I
have no idea where it is, but it was lost forever at South Fork Ranch in the mud.
Well, Jeff, man, I appreciate you sharing that story with us. That's if we were to kind of maybe wrap that story up into a big production principle or even a tech takeaway on like this, if we kind of moved into that part of the show, because you've been on the show and, I'm just greedily asking for another tech takeaway from you because you give such good ones. Like, and I'd really like to connect to that story. What was keeping you level-headed? What was keeping you going? What was kind of just your big live event principle that I'd like for your tech takeaway to be on what kept you going, how you kept a level head, how you made it happen?
Well, it wasn't just me. Obviously, it was a lot of people.
Sure,
totally. It was a video problem, and I had enough audio issues to worry about. So it was, I think part of it was a team's understanding of what we were dealing with and what the goal was. I mean, I think as a team, we understood from Louis and the passion leadership all the way down to understand that, pulling off some whiz bang production element was not what this was about. So it's like, okay, how can we, but at the same time, the show must go on, right? There's this principle from the old days of Broadway. It's like the show must go on. People are coming. They have expectation. We have high expectation for what God's going to do through us and in us. So at some point, you just got to be head down and trucking along. So, for me, that was okay with what I've been tasked to do, which is to create an engaging experience musically and, through this PA, I'm having to make some compromises, but I'm keeping the main thing, the bullseye on the target, keeping that at top of mind, because it would be too easy to get distracted by, gosh, this console is not my preference, or these 3 or 4 stage inputs are kind of noisy. We've got to troubleshoot that, and on and on and on down the line. The generators run out of fuel. It may happen again. This generator looks like a rust bucket. It might not even make it through the event. What are we going to do? Like, those kind of things could easily get you down or make you assume that the whole thing is going to be bad because of them. It's like, man, you've got to sort of filter through that to go, okay, what is the mission accomplished for this event? And for us, it was that these students would engage in worship with each other and with God to take a step in their faith. And I think if we could transfer that mindset to Sunday morning, so that I'm not here just to push a button. I'm not here just to turn a knob. I'm not here just to get this prop on and off stage. I'm not here just to get through this planning center run sheet. Because if you have that mindset, I think, teams who are just trying to be excellent and trying to get through this thing without missing a cue are going to miss it, because at some point, a lot of things are going to go wrong. So if instead our mindset is, okay, how can I be spiritually engaged? How can I be emotionally engaged? How can I be supportive of the people on my team who might be struggling, who might be in a situation where something really is going wrong for them, and it doesn't concern me? How can I sort of divert my energy toward helping them, because we are, at the end of the day, one team who's striving toward the same goal. So that's not one tech takeaway. I mean, that's not even technical really, but it's a mindset. I think it's an approach. It's just being mindful of what the real win, what the bullseye on the target is for the team. And as the leader, if you're the leader of the team, you have to clarify that. You have to give everybody in the team a vision for what that bullseye is. Because it's the only way, I've said it before, I may have even said it on this podcast, it's the only way to celebrate when you hit the bullseye, and it's the only way to evaluate things when you don't. If you don't have a clear objective, then you have a team that is just guessing. Was that okay? Is that what we were supposed to do? Is that what we were setting out to do? Because for all of us, in Uganda that weekend, if you had said, was this a successful event? A lot of us would have said, maybe not, because of all the technical things, because of all the stuff that happened. But if the win for the event was that people who were attending would engage with God and experience him in fresh ways and take a step toward him in their faith, then everybody would say, oh, absolutely, it was a total win. Was it a technical win? No. I mean, there were a lot of things that we would love to have a second rep at, but that wasn't the point. So,
Jeff, listening to what you're saying is, and Blake's heard me say this before, just what you're characterizing is the difference between living in a room full of mirrors versus living in a room full of picture windows. That a lot of technical people will sit in their booth, and when things start breaking down technically, they say, oh, my mix is going to stink. My videos don't look right on the screen. My audio production isn't right. My cues are wrong. My lighting stinks. Well, that's living in a room full of mirrors. Everything that happens reflects back on you. Yeah. But what you're describing is when you were in Uganda, you cleared out all the mirrors and said, we have picture windows. We're looking at the people we're trying to impact, the people we're trying to have influence with, the people we're trying to usher into worshiping God. And I think a lot of times technical people can start putting mirrors up around their booth and think through that lens of it's my responsibility to make sure that's a good experience. No, it's not. Quite frankly, it's not. You play a part in it, but it's not your responsibility to do that. And if you forget that there are people sitting in chairs or pews or whatever, and if you're not looking at them and paying attention to what they're engaging in, then you're just putting mirrors up all around you, and that can hinder you from actually creating experiences for people. You have to see the people. You just can't see your soundboard in front of you.
That's good. That's good.
Well, speaking of some things I'd like to put some mirrors in front of, let's talk about some MxU Pop Ups.
MxU Pop Ups are coming soon. We cannot wait. So we decided this year to kind of shift our plan for live events. Typically, well, actually, historically, I don't know if everybody knows this, but MxU started as a live event. MxU Live was, when Lee and Andrew and I started all this, it was to do a one-day training seminar for front of house engineers. And so January 2016, we had our first event, and it honestly was born from the three of us just wanting to learn from each other. Like, I was on tours. They were both at big churches doing Sundays and conferences and events. And there was never a time for us to kind of sit down with each other and say, hey, what are you doing to get that snare drum sound? Or how are you processing your vocals? Or talk to me about your effects. It was just, because if I showed up at their churches, you can't solo in place your snare mic in the middle of a service. That would be it'd be very interesting for us, but probably a little distracting for the environment. So we said, well, what if we set up consoles in a warehouse and just play back tracks for each other and ask some of those questions? And then we thought, you know what? I bet other people would want to eavesdrop on that conversation. So our first live event was the three of us doing exactly that. And we thought, I don't know, if we could get 100 people to come and listen to us yammer all day, it'd be worth doing. So sure enough, we tried it and it worked. So that first year we did about 5 events, and then the next year we did half a dozen or so, and then the next year. And then we realized, there's no real way to scale this thing. So that's when the MxU platform was born, where we decided to put some of the content online. But then we decided, you know what, we need to have a point of access for our friends who are in video and lighting and worship and other areas of leadership in worship and production. So the last couple of years, our events have changed to be less of a sort of come and learn how to turn the knob to make the band sound better, but how do we work together as a team to make the overall experience better and to make our teams better and to make our sort of culture of our worship and production at church better. And so we've had a couple of things have come into play. One, we've realized that putting on a conference is not really what we need to be doing. I mean, we're really focusing on building online tools for training and development, and we're building we're more of a software company now than an event company. And so as we're continuing to do that, our team needs to focus on that rather than trying to put on a big multi-day conference, because there are other things like SALT conference and Philo and, other conventions that people go to, NAB and Infocom and NAM, where it's like, how can we maybe let them do what they do, but then work on what we do best, which is providing tools for teams in the online space. But we do realize that people still need to and want to connect in person. So for this year, that was a whole long story to say that this year we're trying MxU Pop Ups, which is going back to a one-day experience, but they're going to be regional and smaller. So we're going to come to where the people are, 6 cities across the country throughout the year, and we're just going to spend a day, not necessarily in a massive production environment. We're just going to be around tables, talking about some technical things, but then also talking about leadership and hearing from subject matter experts who are going to talk to us about various topics about how to be a better leader and how to be someone who can really develop volunteers. And, if there are volunteers in the room, helping them understand their role from a spiritual as well as a technical standpoint. So it's going to be a little different in terms of what we've done historically, but we're super excited. So our first one is March 19th in Phoenix. And then April 30th, we're going to be in DC. And then we're not doing another one. We're not doing one in May, but in June, we're going to be in Columbus, Ohio, June 11th. And then not doing one in July, giving people a break for the summer. And then August 20th, we'll be in Dallas. September 5th, we'll be in Fort Lauderdale. And October 8th, we'll be in Seattle. So these are all going to be hosted by churches. We're going to be in a local church. And the idea is that if you live in that region, you can come and hear from us and our team and our partners, but you can also meet people from other churches in the area and network together. There's a lot of cities where there are churches doing great things, and because Sunday's coming and because everybody is just focusing on what they're providing for their local community of faith, they're not really aware of what other people in their area are doing. And so we want to bring those churches together to learn together, but to also learn from each other, to hopefully have a point of connection during the day where they can go, hey, you know what? We need to do this more often on our own. So what if we set up a quarterly get together? Or, man, why don't you come and hang out with my team on a Sunday and just kind of learn from us? Or maybe we'll learn from you and we can, develop a partnership in some ways, because we're all tasked with building the church and serving the church. So how can we do that in a more strategic and collaborative way? So that's really what we're trying to foster here, is not just, hey, come to this big church and see what whiz-bang things they're doing, because we're not really going to show many whiz-bang things. It's going to be, how can we learn how to be better in the ways that we develop, train, serve, and honor our teams. So we're super excited, and we're gonna have a lot of fun.
That's great. I'm excited about these too. I'll put a little plug in. Church Gear will be at all these as well. We're partnering with,
we'll be at them, but which one are we going to, Brian? I'm still trying to get to all 6 of them. I'm putting in my plug here. I want to go to all these. I want to be at the party. This sounds fun. All this community, all this getting together.
But that's what I'm excited about, is MxU's brought together some organizations to partner on all these. And I'm very excited we get to be a part of these. And so we look forward to meeting people and helping build kingdom building inside of cities with churches, technical leaders, worship leaders, all the things that MxU is amazing at. We're glad to be partnering with them. And Jeff, thanks for inviting us to the party.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously the Church Gear guys are going to be there. Todd Elliott from Philo is going to be there. Zach Brady from D&B is going to be there. Jeremy Bagwell from Ross is going to be there. Chad and Brad from Revelux are going to be there. And the reason that these folks are going to be there, and others, Nick and Max and Rachel from Summit and other folks are going to be there. But the reason they're going to be there is not because of the products that they sell or their business strategy or anything like that.
Right.
These people are going to be there because of their passion for helping the church. And so it's not going to be like, trade show booths set up in the lobby and just sort of come and wait for somebody to turn over the tables in the temple. It's like, no, we're actually bringing in people who aren't necessarily concerned with selling gear. They're concerned with helping to build the church.
Heck yeah. This sounds so fun. And what I really love about what we're doing here is that this reminds me of Justin Firesheets. One of my favorite piece of advices I've ever gotten on the podcast was he said he tries to connect with every tech he can, regardless of their church, whether they're smaller than his church, bigger than his church, different than his church. And he learns so much by hanging out with them. And like, that was the moment where I realized, we can do as much as we can for the church production community ourselves, and we'll keep doing it. But them all hanging out at these events and becoming friends with people in their area to start referencing notes with and building community, that's going to be the biggest impact we could ever do. And so I'm so stoked we get to facilitate that this year with all of you guys.
Yeah, we're excited.
To give us some info, it's in MxU right now, Jeff. What would you like to plug, man? What's going on? What are y'all focusing on? I know we've already hit the pop-ups, so we can obviously, send people to, we'll have that in the show notes on where to sign up and where to come hang out with us at. But anything else that you want to talk about that you guys are up to right now, or just want to hit the events one more time? We're really excited to see everybody there.
Yeah, our team is constantly working toward making the MxU platform as engaging as possible and as helpful as possible for teams. And so there's some new features that have just been released that we're really excited about, and we're always working on new features for the future. So first of all, if you're not a part of the MxU platform, you can go to getmxu.com and sign up for free. So there is a way to experience the environment and the sort of interactivity of the MxU platform for free. But if you are a subscriber, there's a lot of larger teams who want to be able to kind of divide their volunteers in a lot of different ways. So a few months ago, we established the ability to put people into groups. So you could have an audio group, a video group, a lighting group, a stage manager group, or whatever within your team. But just last week, we launched campuses. And so now within MxU, you as the sort of admin leader of the account, you can assign other admins and you can divide your team per campus. So if you're a large church that has, several campuses across town, each individual campus can have its own dedicated experience within MxU. If you have different technology needs, if you have, different people who don't know each other across town, you can have sort of this system within a system to be able to manage your campuses in a more efficient way. So that's important. We're always filming new content. I just filmed some content this week with our friend Joe Henson, who's the system engineer for Sam Hunt. And he talked to us about some principles of what a system tech does and how to think about your audio system in terms of a system engineer, which was great. We're doing some content next week with Ableton, and we're going to be recording some specific content on best use practices for Ableton, how to manage tracks well, how to think about your role as an MD in your worship team. So a lot of stuff is coming, and we're really excited. We're focusing, other than MxU Pop Ups this year, we're focusing a lot on the content library. So, before you know it, we're going to have over 700 videos on platform, and the topics are continually being diversified, and the voices that are bringing you those topics are going to be diverse as well. So we're super excited.
Yeah, if you've not been on MxU's platform, you really should. And Brian, if people buy stuff from us, we send them a free membership to MxU. If you look in your order confirmation email, there's a button for that. So if you're hearing this, and you can go to the link Jeff said, or if you pull up an email, you can get on there. You should check it out. It's fun.
Sounds exciting.
And Brian, I think we might film some stuff. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe we could be on there.
I mean, Jeff has already said, though, you're not allowed to be on the stage.
That's true. But maybe someone else from Church Gear could help out.
Yeah, Blake doesn't get a microphone, but maybe Toby will.
There we go.
I've supplanted Toby.
Ooh.
Now, because he's now moved to weekends. So Jeff, maybe I'll take a microphone from Toby, if you trust me. we can talk about that.
We'd love to have you.
Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the show, man, and we're looking forward to seeing you in person soon at some of these pop-ups.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for hanging out with us. We hope to see you back next week for more absurd stories, tech takeaways, and overall buffoonery here at the Church Gear Studios.
Brian, we fired Toby today. I don't think we just fired him. I think I'm halfway dug the hole from all the rains in Africa. I've dug that hole. The ground was really mush, and I've buried him.
That's good. We don't need to. We've just proved today we don't need Toby any longer. For the podcast.
For the company.
For the company.
For the universe.
He's now the Church Gear Emeritus. I think that means you have some sort of level of I don't even have a responsibility. You just have a title and no responsibility. Although I think Toby's Enneagram Wing 7 would love that.
Oh, yeah.
Of having all the fun and no responsibility. But we're 2 8s. So I think now our 8ness has created the best podcast ever.
Yes, I don't think it gets any better than this. And the only thing that could be better than this is attending an MxU Pop Up. So don't miss out. For real. Don't listen to this and think, oh, I'm going to sign up. No, sign up right now. Go look at the page right now. It's in the show notes. Come hang out with us.